Hey guys, it's been a while since I put something up on the channel. Been kind of busy getting some other things taken care of. So we got that shrine cart that we had in here, that little big rig thing. Got that finished, got it powder coated, got it delivered. We actually drove it in a couple of parades over the 4th of July weekends. It performed flawlessly. We had no issues with it. So hopefully we'll get a couple more of those built. The guys up at the shrine are very happy with it. So as you can see, my engine stand is empty right now. That doesn't mean that I don't have any other engines to work on. I actually have one sitting behind these seats right here. I have a flathead sitting on the floor right there. We'll talk about it in a minute. But the one on the engine stand is the one that is supposed to be in the Jeep. It was the original motor to the Jeep. We're rebuilding it, and right now it's at the machine shop. So I got it delivered to the machine shop. A little bit of a fun experience with that. I had talked to the guys at the machine shop, called them up on the phone, and asked them if they could do the work on it, because it is a little bit of an older motor, and I wasn't sure if they knew, how to work with it, or if they even had equipment to work with it anymore, because some of the shops have closed down, or they don't work on the old equipment. Anyway, so I called them up and they said yeah, they can work on it. And they knew what type of motor it was. They had had some experience with them. So I was like, okay. And that was really kind of all the conversation. They told me to make sure I knew where to get bearings for it and parts for it and all that, but not to buy them yet, which is pretty common when you're going to rebuild an old motor like this. You don't want to buy the bearings and the pistons and the rings and all of that stuff until you're done with the machine work. Makes sense, but a lot of people get ahead of themselves and they think they're going to buy everything up front, take it all to the machine shop and give it to the machines guys and say, there you go, there's all the motor stuff. Well, obviously it doesn't make sense to do that because you don't know the final dimensions of bearing sizes and journal sizes and all that stuff until you're done doing the machine work. You don't know if your crank's got to be polished or if it's going to have to be cut down. You don't know if your bores on your cylinders are going to have to be bored out, and are they going to get bored out 10 over, 20 over, 30 over? You don't know. It all kind of depends on how old the motor is, how out of shape it is, how out of round and out of square, and all those sort of things. So, but not my first rodeo. I've built several engines before. So I took the motor up there to him, and the guy that owned the shop, he's a pretty good guy. I've had some work done from him before. It's been a few years, but he wasn't there. His son was there, and when I said I was dropping off the motor, he was a little surprised. He's like, hey, do you have it with you? I was like, well, yeah, it's out in the truck. And he's like, oh, well, we're only doing it by appointment only. And that's the first I had heard of that. And I told him, I was like, well, I talked to, the guy on the phone, and, I'm not mentioning their names right now because, I don't know advertising and all of that sort of stuff. Anyway. But, so I said, well, I talked to the guy, and he didn't tell me to make an appointment or anything like that. I just figured, when time was right, bring it in. And he's like, oh, it's okay, we'll go ahead and take it. He's like, but normally we do by appointment only because we have so much work coming in the door. We want to kind of slow it down a little bit. And that makes sense. So we go out and we look at the motor, and I kind of tell him what I want done with it, which really not a lot. I just want the hot tanking done, clean the motor really well. There's a screw that I want taken out of the oil galleries internally. Cam bearings, and then do the checking work. So I told him, showed him I have all the main journals there. I took the bearings out of them, but the journals are there. I brought the pistons with the piston rings and everything in there so that they can test the bores, see if they need to be bored out, see if I need new pistons, see how out of round they are. So he was really happy with that I had brought all of that stuff and not gone and bought new pieces, because you just never know. Anyway, so we talked about it a little bit, and we talked a little bit about the history of the Jeep, where it came from. For those that don't remember, it actually came from Texas. It used to belong on a ranch out there. It was a hunting ranch, hunting, fishing. The guys would go boar hunting or deer hunting, whatever, on the ranch. But before it became the hunting ranch, it was a large piece of property out in Texas owned by the Marathon Petroleum Corporation. And the Jeep was out there. I don't know who owned the Jeep or how it got there, but it was there, and they would use it to run around the property and do all this stuff. So from there, it got sold when, I guess they sold the farm. It was basically an estate sale or property sale, and it was just a piece of property that got sold. One of the guys bought it. He didn't do a whole lot with it. Tried to do some fixing up to it. I think, again, got in over his head, but I don't know the guy, so I'm not going to talk bad about him here. The other guy bought it from him, did a little bit with it, let it sit around, just really didn't have the interest in it. He was building another car that kind of took his time and attention. And that was my dad. He got it, and after a while he decided he didn't want to do anything with it, so he offered it up to me. We worked out a deal. I got the Jeep from him. Long story short, here it is. So, we've been doing a lot of work with it. We're trying to go through the history of it and find out, paperwork and what the actual numbers are on it. And, maybe I'll do a short video on the actual numbers of the Jeep. I've done a few little shorts on them, but maybe I'll do one, a little bit longer in a minute. So, I told him about where it came from, and, he's like, well, how many miles are on it? I'm like, I have no idea. I replaced the speedometer a few years ago when I got it. The speedometer that's in there has about 800 miles on it, which is pretty much what I've put on it. I drive it mostly off-road, up and down the mountain, which is obviously not very far, a couple miles in any given weekend. I generally don't drive it around the roads here because it's too slow. It's got the 5.83 to 1 gear ratio. So to go 40 miles an hour, it's screaming its guts out and getting passed by everything. Everybody here drives at about 100 miles an hour, and to see something like this on the road, you might as well be driving a lawn tractor. They will just run you over. So I tried to drive it around a little bit around here as much as I can, but I generally don't get more than 2 or 3 miles away from the house with it, just because it's too slow to really cruise around here. So, yeah, I don't know how many miles are on it, and I told the guy, I was like, listen, it's got, 60 years of driving on it, but I don't know how many miles. Probably not a lot in actual mileage. And other than that one bearing burning up and knocking really bad, up until that point it ran like a champ, and it still ran well-ish after that. So, I don't think there's going to be a lot of work done to it. The other thing is, when we dropped the motor off, the guy told me it's a $400 deposit just to drop the motor off. That's before any work is done, just to leave the motor. That's the first I'd heard of that too. I had told him that I had no idea about that. And he's like, I should have been told that, before I brought the motor down. I'm like, well, yeah, that'd be nice to know. So he went ahead and let me leave the motor and all the parts that I had with him there. He wrote up a little ticket for it, and I told him I'd be back in a day or so to get him the money, get a deposit done. Because I want them to make sure that they have what they need to get the work done. And I told him, I was like, yeah, we'll get it taken care of. And came home, talked to the wife, and within 4 or 5 hours, I got done with work, ran back up there, gave him the deposit, and at that time the owner was actually there, and I talked to him for a few minutes, and we had an interesting conversation, what little we could, because he's so incredibly busy. And I told him, so wasn't that a good problem to have? You got all this work coming in the door, you're keeping busy. And he's like, actually, it's the opposite. I've got way too much work coming in the door, because machine shops around the area and around the country are shutting down. There's just not people doing this type of work anymore, at least not to the level that people want them to. There's a lot of enthusiasts like me who want to rebuild these old motors. There's guys that want to build hot rods and race cars. I don't live very far from a drag race track. There's a lot of guys running super sport cars down there. They need motors built all the time. They need machine work done all the time. And there's just not enough machine shops anymore. He was saying they've probably closed, 20 or 30 of them in the last handful of years around here. And I know that my dad, he's out in Arkansas, and they have the same problem out there. They just don't have any machine shops. He's got to run 200 to 300 miles just to find a machine shop to get work done out there. There's shops out there that build hot rods, but they can't get engines because there's no machine shops around them to build engines for them. So you know, a lot of the guys who did this type of work, you know, they're getting older, they're, you know, retiring, they're passing away, and there's just not enough people coming behind them to do that work. Not enough people want to get into the trades, not enough people want to do the machinist work, you know, and so those people that are still in it, yeah, they've got work. I mean, like this guy, he's got a ton of work, but he wants to build engines. He used to build race engines, performance engines. He actually has a couple of videos up here on YouTube where he talks about engines he's built, and some of them are pretty cool. But he said he's probably 2 years away from doing any assembly work at all because he's got just too much machine work that he's got to get through, and he doesn't have the staff and, you know, the time to get through all of the work so he could get to the fun projects. And I was like, well, I've got 3 more motors behind this one to build. I mean, I got the small block, or not small, but the flathead V8 on the floor behind me. I've got another flathead that's sitting outside in the 46. I picked up an Isuzu motor when I went to Arkansas earlier this year that I want to rebuild. It's a pretty interesting little motor kind of out of the Chevy Love. We'll talk about it on another day. So, I mean, I've got work for this guy, and it's like, I kind of feel bad. It's like, well, I've got, here's more work that you don't have time to do. So, and I asked him, like, roughly how long would it take to do the work that I'm asking him to. He said a couple of weeks. We'll see. One of the things he also mentioned is that, you know, people will drop off work, and they'll call him every other day, every third day. Like, all right, is it done yet? Is it done yet? Is it done yet? And then they'll quit calling, because it takes time to get through that. It's not a matter of just doing your motor. It's got to be in line with everybody else's. And so when he does finally get done with it, he'll call the people and say, hey, your motor's done. Come get it. And then they don't show up. They don't come get it. Either they don't have the money to pay for it, or they don't have the time. So then he's got to store it. And then he's like, I've got like a whole bunch of equipment in the back that people just need to come get and pay for. And he said that would solve a large part of my problem, because it's equipment that's in the way. It's parts, you know, motors, cranks, whatever, that's got to get out of here. And, you know, people need to final up their bills and all that sort of thing. And, you know, I just don't understand that, because, you know, I'm not going to bother the guy. But as soon as he tells me it's ready, I'll be there either that day or the next day to go get it, because I want to build this thing and get it running. So I don't understand leaving your motor sitting down at the machine shop. You know, if you ask the guy to do work, when he's done with it, go get your parts. Anyway, so yeah, I just want to kind of touch base and, you know, kind of show you the garage is kind of empty right now. Like, yeah, I want to get you on a swivel here. So there's the Jeep sitting over there, waiting on us to build the motor. There's an empty engine stand right there. Space to do things. And then over here we got my oil change stuff, and my cabinet's full of stuff. Tools and pieces and stuff, and there's really nothing else going on in here. There we go. So, here pretty soon, we're going to see if we can get some more work done on one or two of the other projects we've had just kind of kicking around. We got an ATV in the back we got to work on. We've got a trailer in the back we got to take apart. I got a Mustang back there I want to get the motor and transmission out of, but the guys aren't here today. They got other things to do. I'll give them a hard time about that later. But it's hot. It's the middle of the summer. It's, you know, 90 degrees or something outside. It's not as hot as it was over the weekend. It was really hot. But anyway, this video is getting kind of long. I'm going to close this one out, and I may do another one real quickly on the Jeep numbers, and we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.